All right, let's go back to Pretoria, where the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as his German counterpart, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, are currently just about to brief the media. This is the German Chancellor's official visit to South Africa. Let's go there now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cyril, and it's an honor for me to welcome His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa and His Excellency Chancellor Scholz of the Federal Republic of Germany to this press conference. We also welcome the ministerial and official delegations of both countries, and because we are at this point in our program, we particularly welcome the media from the Federal Republic of Germany and South Africa who have joined us for this press conference. I would like to begin by inviting Your Excellency President Ramaphosa to deliver remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyrone. His Excellency Olaf Scholz, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, ambassadors, ministers and deputy ministers and senior officials from both countries and members of the South African and German media. It is indeed an honor to have this opportunity to receive Chancellor Scholz and his delegation this morning. Germany, as many of you will know, is one of our valued strategic partners. It is our second largest trading partner, a major investor in our economy, wonder why they do that. South Africa is currently home to around 600 companies, and bilateral trade between our two countries is growing. We have discussed avenues during our talks of increased trade and investment of German companies in South Africa, but also of South African companies into Germany. Germany is committed to support our efforts towards industrialization, infrastructure development, as well as job creation, as laid out in the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. Germany has been a partner to our country in development since the establishment of diplomatic relations between our two countries. This cooperation has been in a range of fields, including good governance and strengthening democracy, and climate actions, as well as energy. We have discussed the next steps in our Just Transition Partnership, which was concluded between South Africa, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, the United States, as well as the European Union last year. This historic partnership will support our just transition to a low-carbon economy, and also it will support our climate-resilient society in a manner that leaves no one behind. Later today, Chancellor Scholz and his delegation will be visiting Sasol, where we will be launching a historic partnership for the development of carbon emissions reductions technologies, including the green hydrogen. Another important area of cooperation between our two countries is that of vocational training and how young people can be more effectively integrated into the world of work. The Federal Republic of Germany has been a dependable partner and supporter of our efforts to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. We have expressed our gratitude to Chancellor Scholz for the assistance Germany has given, not just to South Africa, but to the continent of Africa as well. We also discussed the support Germany can lend to our efforts to ensure that vaccines produced in Africa are given greater market share in developed countries, and that vaccines destined for the African populations should be produced locally here in Africa. Chancellor Scholz and I also discussed a broad range of international issues, and these included the pursuit of peace and security on the African continent. We also discussed the conflict in Ukraine and the need for the international community to encourage dialogue and negotiation towards a ceasefire and a peaceful negotiation or resolution. With these remarks, Your Excellency, I wish to welcome you once again to South Africa and thank you for having taken time to come visit us here in South Africa. Your visit helps to consolidate and strengthen the ties that exist not only between our two peoples, but also at an economic level, from a trade point of view, investment point of view, as well as development point of view. So thank you very much, and I hand over to you.
Lieber Herr Präsident, ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich für diesen wunderbaren Empfang in Südafrika und für die Gastfreundschaft. Das letzte Mal haben wir uns vor 3 Monaten getroffen. Ich erinnere mich sehr, sehr gut an unser Gespräch damals am Rande des EU-Afrika-Gipfels. Und bald schon werden wir uns ein drittes Mal sehen. Für Ende Juni habe ich Sie zum G7-Gipfel eingeladen. Von dort, von Elmau, soll ein gemeinsames Signal starker Demokratien ausgehen, die sich ihrer globalen Verantwortung bewusst sind. Wir wollen dort konkrete Initiativen und Partnerschaften für Klima- und nachhaltige Investitionen ergreifen, die Ernährungssicherung weltweit verbessern, die globale Gesundheit erhöhen und Demokratien widerstandsfähiger machen. Südafrika ist und bleibt für Deutschland ein Schlüsselland auf dem afrikanischen Kontinent. Das umfangreiche Programm meines Besuchs ist ein Ausdruck dafür und auch ein Ausdruck unserer vielfältigen und vertraulichen Zusammenarbeit, etwa in den Bereichen Wirtschaft, Energie, Handel und Wissenschaft. Unsere Länder teilen den Respekt für eine demokratische Kultur und unser Engagement für eine multilaterale, regelbasierte Weltordnung. Keine Frage, wir stehen in diesen Zeiten vor großen globalen Herausforderungen. Der russische Angriffskrieg gegen die Ukraine,
the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, the COVID-19 pandemic and the climate crisis, to name but 3, have tremendous repercussions on our lives. In order to mitigate the consequences, 2 things are important: solidarity and intensive cooperation. And this is why I'm here in Africa. Europe at present is witnessing a terrible war after Russia attacked Ukraine. Germany stands in close solidarity to Ukraine and supports Ukraine so that it can defend itself against aggressors. I'm delighted that we have the opportunity today to hear and discuss South Africa's viewpoint. Mr. President, I think it's important that we continue to this dialogue. This war does not only affect Europe, and this is why I assured the President that we are aware of the grave consequences of the war for Africa, and we are fully aware of these. Germany has the G7 presidency this year, and in this capacity we have drafted concrete proposals in order to mitigate the repercussions of the Russian aggression on energy prices, global economy, and food security. These issues will play a crucial role at the G7 summit in Elmau. I am happy and delighted that South Africa accepted my invitation and will participate. We also talked about peace and security in Africa. President Ramaphosa talked about the important role the SADC troops play when it comes to containing Islamist terrorism in Cabo Delgado. And South Africa plays an invaluable role as a strong and resilient democracy for the political and economic stability on this continent. And we're fully aware of this, and I'd like to honor and acknowledge this role, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the climate crisis is a global crisis. That means we can only tackle it and combat it globally. We need to expand the use of renewable energies and reduce the consumption of fossil fuels in order to mitigate the consequences of climate change. This requires close economic cooperation and ambitious goals. In Germany, we're currently about to accelerate the transformation of our energy supply. We don't want to keep our knowledge and our experience to ourselves. The Just Energy Transition Partnership, which you mentioned, where Germany is participating together, other partners, is talking about these urgent issues. I'm delighted that we are actually talking about the implementation of projects via the leaders' updates and other measures that are to be taken. This transition partnership can be a key instrument in order to accelerate the transformation towards climate neutrality. And it will be also a starting point that the private business community will invest more in South Africa, focusing on future-oriented markets like the green hydrogen. Today, this afternoon, I'm going to visit the South African company Sasol. It's the result of a promising German-South African research cooperation in order to develop jet fuel for aviation, which is carbon neutral. I will also attend the 70th anniversary of the German-South African Chamber of Industry and Commerce, which is a further proof just how committed German companies are in South Africa. President Ramaphosa and myself also talked about the close cooperation in the field of vaccine production. We all agree just how important vaccines are in order to successfully deal with the pandemic. Es ist großartig, hier in Südafrika zu sein. Herzlichen Dank. Wir werden nun die Gelegenheit haben.
Translated, please.
No, but we understood. I did. Okay.
I think we're battling with this. I think we'll proceed with the first question from Mr. Bruchler. If you're available for your first question, please. Microphone to Mr. Bruchler, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Daniel Brössler, Süddeutsche Zeitung. Question to the President. President South Africa has abstained in the United Nations in the vote against the Russian attack on Ukraine. Mr. President, did you change your mind meanwhile? Are you condemning the war against Ukraine that your guest Olaf Scholz is calling Putin's war? And is it your opinion that Russia can and should take part in the G20 summit? And if I may ask, South Africa, as a country that has profited so much from the sanctions against apartheid, why is South Africa not supporting the sanctions against Russia in this case? Und Herr Bundeskanzler, darf ich Sie fragen, inwieweit schwächt es die Position gegenüber Russland und das Vorgehen gegen Russland, dass so viele Länder der Welt nicht an den Sanktionen gegen Russland teilnehmen? Und sollte Ihrer Ansicht nach Russland am G20-Gipfel in diesem Jahr teilnehmen oder nicht? Vielen Dank.
Okay. Yeah, no, so that one I heard, yeah. No, thank you very much. Chancellor Scholz and I had a couple of good minutes in our tete-a-tete, and we talked about a whole number of issues, including the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine. And I was actually quite heartened by the explanations that he gave in regard to the stance that they have taken. But Chancellor Scholz also understands, and did say understands, the positions that have been taken by a number of countries in the world that there are a number of countries, a majority, who supported the stance that was taken at the United Nations General Assembly, also understood those that voted in favor of Russia, and also understood those that abstained, and South Africa being amongst those, and understands very much the reasons that each of the countries have articulated. And as you well know, the position that we took was that we would like negotiations, dialogue, and engagement to underpin engagements with Russia on this matter, or between the two countries. And we've been fairly consistent on that, because we know very well the value of dialogue, negotiation, and collaboration, as in many ways it also gave birth to our own democracy. We are where we are as a nation, as a country, as a result of dialogue, negotiation, and collaboration between belligerent entities. We were pitted against each other with the apartheid regime, but it was only through dialogue, through negotiation, that brought the end to the conflict. And that is a position that we've articulated. And interestingly, we've also articulated that position to both President Putin and to President Zelensky as well. And to also those that we have had occasion to talk to, including President Biden, President Xi Jinping, President Macron, and a number of others. And it is this position that I believe should really be the order of the day. And it is for that reason today also that we say we'd like this conflict to come to an end. And one of the best ways of doing so is to call for a cessation of hostilities. And that should be achieved through negotiation. And in the end, once there is, say, a ceasefire, we would then be able to get the two belligerent parties into serious negotiations. Now, you spoke about sanctions. Now, the sanctions that have been imposed on Russia are going to have and are having an overarching impact. Even those countries that are either bystanders or not part of the conflict are also going to suffer from the sanctions that have been imposed against Russia. Now, sanctions that you spoke about that were imposed against South Africa during the apartheid regime were a different set of sanctions. There were countries that supported those, and there were countries that did not support. But in the end, what really succeeded was negotiation. And negotiation brought the end of the apartheid nightmare and the apartheid conflict. And Chancellor Scholz understands the position that we have taken. And of course, on these types of matters, countries take different positions. And our position in the end is what we believe will be the real true solution to the conflict that is going on between the two countries. Engagement, dialogue, and negotiation. I don't see any other way other than negotiation and dialogue. Thank you very much.
Ja, schönen Dank. Ich gebe jetzt nochmal für alle bekannt, die Übersetzungen erfolgen jetzt konsekutiv, sodass das für alle verfolgt werden kann. Noch einmal zu dem Krieg, den Russland gegen die Ukraine begonnen hat. Es ist ein Angriffskrieg. Ziel Russland ist es, ukrainisches Territorium zu erobern, das nicht zu Russland gehört. Und das muss auch, glaube ich, jedem klar sein, der diese Situation bewertet. Denn tatsächlich ist das ja die Herausforderung, vor der die ukrainische Nation steht, die ihre Integrität und Souveränität verteidigt. Wir alle sind uns einig, dass die Grenzen, die wir in der Welt haben, nicht mit Gewalt verschoben werden dürfen. Der Präsident Kenias hat das im Weltsicherheitsrat sehr ausführlich erläutert. Und das ist, glaube ich, auch etwas, was für den Frieden in der Welt von größter Bedeutung ist.
Thank you very much. There will be consecutive interpretation now because the micro. Thank you very much. There will be consecutive interpretation now because the booths didn't work. We all agree that the war that Russia started against Ukraine is a war of aggression with the aim to conquer territory that is not that does not belong to Russia. It is clear that the major challenge is now for Ukraine to defend its integrity and sovereignty. And we're all in agreement that there must not be a violent new delineation of borders here. And the President of Kenya aptly described it in the Security Council. And this is a major challenge to peace.
Wir haben uns sehr bewusst entschieden, dass wir die Ukraine unterstützen mit finanziellen Möglichkeiten. Deutschland, die Europäische Union, viele andere Länder mit humanitärer Hilfe, aber natürlich auch mit militärischer Waffenlieferung, damit sie sich verteidigen kann. Und wir haben Sanktionen auf den Weg gebracht, die notwendig sind, damit dieser Krieg beendet werden kann.
We deliberately decided to lend support to Ukraine, financial support and also in form of humanitarian assistance, Germany and the countries of the European Union. We also lent humanitarian assistance but also militarily in order for Ukraine to enable itself to defend itself. We also brought sanctions on the way that we deemed necessary.
Was die Einschätzung dazu betrifft, gibt es unterschiedliche Sichtweisen. Das haben wir auch miteinander diskutiert und das ist auch notwendig, darüber zu reden. Ich finde wichtig, dass es ist ein Unterschied. Es gibt einige Länder, die haben auf der Seite Russlands abgestimmt. Das kann ich nicht akzeptieren und das ist auch nicht hinnehmbar. Aber es gibt natürlich unterschiedliche Positionen. Ich werbe selbstverständlich für die wir in Deutschland entwickelt haben. Und deshalb ist es gut, dass wir darüber auch sprechen können miteinander.
There are different views, different assessments. These needs to be discussed, and it is necessary to talk and discuss these. There are various countries who voted in line with Russia. This is intolerable. I advocated for a different position here in Germany.
And we discussed on the question how to deal with that, having different views on the question how to act in the General Assembly. Und auf dieser Basis ist es wichtig, dass wir jetzt alles dazu beitragen, dass die Kriegshandlungen eingestellt werden, dass Russland auch seine Truppen zurückzieht. So sehe ich das und so sehen wir das und dass es möglich ist, dass eine friedliche Entwicklung möglich ist, die die Integrität und Souveränität der Ukraine ermöglicht. Darum geht's.
And on this basis, we must do our utmost for this war to end. This war needs to be stopped. Russia needs to withdraw the troops so that Ukraine can peacefully develop again and can restore its integral and territorial sovereignty and integrity.
Und trotzdem ist es wichtig, dass wir über die weltweiten Auswirkungen diskutieren. Das haben wir gemacht, denn es sind ja viele Länder von dem russischen Angriffskrieg betroffen. Weltweit, in Asien, in Afrika, im Süden Amerikas. Und deshalb ist es von größter Bedeutung, dass wir alle darauf hinwirken, dass dieser Krieg zu Ende kommt.
And still, it is also important to discuss the global repercussions of this war. We discussed this. Many countries around the globe are affected in Asia, in Africa and Latin America. And we need to address and discuss these repercussions.
Was die G20 betrifft, finde ich, ist eine gute Entscheidung, dass die indonesische Präsidentschaft Präsident Zelensky dorthin eingeladen hat. Alle anderen, das ist, glaube ich, der ganz wichtige Schritt, der jetzt erfolgen musste. Im Übrigen wird über die Frage genau zu entscheiden sein, wenn die Treffen nahe kommen. Das ist noch lange nicht der Fall.
And I believe also in this context that it was a good decision for the G20 on the Indonesian presidency to invite Zelensky to attend. It's an important step that was taken, and we need to talk about further details as we come closer to the G20 summit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Due to time constraints, we only have time for one question from the South African side. And we've decided that that question will go to the person who's wearing 2 of Germany's 3 national colors, Sophie Mokoena.
Thank you so much. My name is Sophie Mokoena. I'm from the South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC. My question is directed to both leaders, starting with Chancellor Scholz. Currently, the European Union member countries are discussing the issue of the oil embargo against Russia. The other issue is the criticism that Germany has abandoned Ukraine when Ukraine called for assistance, particularly in relation to supply of arms. What are your responses to both issues? And then to President Ramaphosa, Mr. President, the chair of the African Union, President Macky Sall, has announced that he will be traveling to Moscow, Russia, to meet President Vladimir Putin, and he will also travel to Kyiv in Ukraine to meet President Zelensky. Are you optimistic that diplomatic shuttle will yield results, particularly coming from representatives in Sub-Sahara and Africa in particular?
So I hope I have got your question right. That was it was not very easy to hear it, but in the end, we decided to impose a lot of sanctions against Russia to convince the Russian leadership that they should stop the war. And between those, we have decided that we will go out of the import of coal to Europe and also to Germany in autumn of this year. And this will work because there are a lot of suppliers all over the globe that are willing and ready to sell their coal to those countries that have got them so far from Russia. And obviously there are some, as South Africa for instance, where we will do so, and this is something that is very manageable. The second is that we will go out of the use of the import of oil from Russia, and we are working to make this happen up to the end of this year, which is in the case of Germany a task where we have to work on, but it is feasible because most of the supply already is coming with ships from abroad, so it is just the supply that is now coming with a pipeline to just 2 but big refineries, and we are now working how we can make it feasible that they get the supply also via ship, and then we will have the chance to have other suppliers for oil imports to Germany. In the case of the whole European Union, we are discussing this question today because there are some countries which have technically more difficulties to solve this because of the infrastructure, how they get their oil, and this is something where we are working on. Just to make clear that we will go out of this. In the case of some countries, it will take a longer time, but in the end, there is a big willingness to go this way. And the third is that we are discussing about how we can diversify our supply with gas and getting away from the need to buy it from Russia. And this is also meaning and makes it necessary that we invest into infrastructures that gives us a chance to buy gas from LNG, liquid gas, which is the way many countries of the world are already doing. And making this happen is the basis for getting out of the need of importing the gas from Russia. This is the 3 questions I think you raised, how we do it and what is the aspect that I can report to you from what the European Union, for instance, is doing in this field. On the other hand, it is one of the questions that we already discussed, which is not much, which has nothing to do with this conflict, but where we see now that things are changing even faster as they did before, and this is that we are creating ways how we can produce our industrial goods, how we can have an industry that is CO2 neutral in a very short time. The aim is to get there in the midst of this century, and maybe in the case of Germany, we want to be there in 2045. And this means that we will have to act intensely, and one of the aspects of this is using other ways of using gas, that is hydrogen, for instance, and this is why it is so important to see that we have a broad basis for a cooperation in the field of producing hydrogen, for instance, together with many countries of the world, and especially South Africa. Ich habe das Wort nicht verstanden. I just got a hint. I haven't heard it even now because it was so silent what you said. But yes, we are doing this supply of weapons together with many others, and we are doing is to make it feasible that Ukraine is able to defend its country. They are the one that have to fight against a foreign aggressor that is trying to change borders with force, which we cannot accept, and this is why we do so.
In relation to the question you raised about the African Union chairperson going to Moscow and also to Ukraine, I had occasion to attend the meeting of the African Union Bureau, and at that meeting a discussion ensued on Africa's stance and response to the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine. It was there decided, and we participated in the discussion, that indeed the chair of the AU, President Macky Sall, should travel to Russia, but we also said that he should travel to Ukraine. So it should not just be a one-sided type of visit. We believe that Africa does have a role to play because it has access to both leaders in both countries to foster the whole process of dialogue, to foster the whole process of negotiation. And of course, Africa, like any other country, will approach these discussions with a hope that they will have an impact. And that's the best that we can do, to embark on, if you like, a diplomatic process that will be led by President Macky Sall, as well as the chair of the Commission, Mr. Musa Mohammed. So we want them to go, and in a way they'll also be representing Africa and Africa's views and perspective on what we believe needs to happen. And as I said, this will all be underpinned by Africa's quest to see that there should be dialogue, because, as I said, that is the only way that even Africa sees this conflict coming to an end. We don't really see it coming to an end in any other way, as it has gone on for so long. Just commenting on the last part of Chancellor Scholz's views or point on the cooperation between the two countries, South Africa and Germany, I would like to believe that our relationship will be turbocharged into a much higher level as both countries transit towards greater aspects of renewable technologies, utilization, for instance, of hydrogen. And we are very heartened to hear that Germany will be wanting to cooperate with countries like ours in that regard. We have embarked on a hydrogen economy direction, and we hope to be one of the key players in the hydrogen sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellencies, for sharing this part of the afternoon with us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to our delegations. We will now allow our leaders to take their leave. Thank you.
All right, that's President Cyril Ramaphosa and his German counterpart, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who are briefing or were briefing the media at the Union buildings in Pretoria. If you did miss that, let me recap some of the things that they shared with us. President Ramaphosa reminding us about the strategic partnership that they have developed with Germany, and reminding us of that, the fact that there's 600 German companies that are operating in South Africa, and how Germany has committed itself to supporting South Africa's plans of industrialization as well as job creation. They've had cooperation between, or signed cooperation between themselves on climate change as well as energy, on the just energy transition. We're talking about how Germany is also supporting the Just Energy Transition Partnership to a low-carbon economy. And later, of course, they'll be launching a consortium at Sasol here in Johannesburg, talking also on the issue of Russia and Ukraine. President Ramaphosa speaking about a peace resolution and a ceasefire that they've also managed to discuss, and how sanctions that have been imposed on Russia are also having an impact, an overarching impact on those countries. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz mentioning about Germany is aware of the consequences of the Russia war on both in the world, particularly also in South Africa. They also he mentioned that how they spoke about peace and security in Africa, also mentioning the issue of climate crisis and how it should be combated globally. Once again, Chancellor Scholz mentioning the Just Energy Transition Partnership and the implementation of projects, because this is quite key, projects that will be happening between the two countries, the business delegation, business communities being willing to invest more in the green energy space. And of course, it is the 70th anniversary of the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in South Africa. Chancellor Scholz congratulating the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in South Africa. Some of the nuggets that came out of that press briefing. But for now, we'll go to a quick break.